All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Semo?
Well, we're back on schedule, even though Heath's brain isn't back on schedule.
No, it is not.
But we are on our social episode, and this is the last time we get to rant before D-Day.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
uh,
and I had things I wanted to rant about. And I was texting you about during the week, but then I read ahead in Wheel of Time, and my brain got stuck on some stuff that I hadn't noticed before, and I was like, "Oh, hey, does this mean that?" So I've been thinking about that all the. I feel like I'm really enjoying this reread. The further we go on, it's there's a nice bit of nostalgia of reminding me of back in the day when I was on the forums and talking with other nerds about, what do you think this means or what do you think of this theory, you know? So it's a nice relief from the awfulness, and we're going to need it on Wednesday because I'm very dubious that even by Wednesday we're going to have an announced winner.
uh,
I
it
can.
depends. It depends on the East Coast because
Mm,
if for some reason, which there is precedent for this with the recent Youngkin gubernatorial win, Virginia flips and PA goes red, it's over. I mean,
I
we
see
don't
what
even
you mean.
we don't
Yeah.
even have to worry about Maricopa County or any of that bullshit. So if those two things
Mm,
happen,
mm.
mathematically, it's almost a slam dunk at that point.
Well, but
And
but that's what I mean by announced winner, because I don't know who the Secretary of State in Virginia is, but the secretaries of state in places like Pennsylvania and Michigan, I know Michigan for sure. Michigan is a hot mess. Arizona, the Secretary of State recently got slapped down by the Supreme Court for shenanigans. The secretaries of state are already saying, "Don't get impatient. It's going to take a while to do all these votes. Not as long as it took in 2020 because of all the COVID measures, but it's still going to take a while." Trans.
but also the courts are shooting them down in a lot of ways, like the undocumented immigrant votes got thrown out.
Uh-huh.
They initially got put back in, but then a higher court said, no, 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 no. We're not doing that. We're not having that mess because, realistically, I think this time around, the courts are trying to get ahead because they
Hmm.
were put in a very bad spot last time where they would be deciding the election. And now
Well, that's a good point.
I think they're trying to get ahead so they're not put in that spot again. Uh,
That's a good point because I have brought up a couple of times articles talking about the Wisconsin Supreme Court. In the aftermath of the 2020 election, they just punted. They wouldn't hear the case.
mhm.
So, for anyone who doesn't know and is continuing the talking points of every case in the 2020 election, Trump lost. No, no. Every court punted based on standing.
Yeah, they're human. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's not get too hard on them because look at all of the cases where justices have been doxxed here in recent history, and people have shown up outside of their house and with
Yep.
firebombs and stuff. So, these are humans, and we have to understand that.
There was an anonymous leaker from the Supreme Court who said the argument there got so heated that they could hear the justices screaming at each other. And the one in particular that I remember is somebody, probably Thomas, pointing out, "Hey, we took up the case in Bush v. Gore
Hmm.
because the Supreme Court, because the highest court, the highest federal court, needed to adjudicate this federal election, even though it is done at the state level, it is a federal election." And the reply from supposedly Roberts was a screaming, "In 2000, we didn't have people effing rioting in the streets." He didn't say effing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that is crazy because how contentious that election was, and we all kept our cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of that
It was
is
all contentious rhetorically.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is the two candidates because you had establishment against establishment. So the rhetoric machine was subdued to some degree. You know, pictures of the guy with his big eye looking at the Chad, that was hilarious and disturbing at the same
Hmm.
time, but it wasn't inflammatory. And what we got in 2016 and then 2020 was very inflammatory. I mean, we had riots outside of the Capitol in 2016, 2017 inauguration. They just had the National Guard there and a
Hmm.
2,000-foot perimeter around the Capitol building. So, these things have been building up for a while. I think part of that's those charts we talk about with the
Hmm.
media spinning things in certain ways, which didn't happen in 2000 because they weren't allowed to. Uh, and then on top of that, it's just the more power we give the executive branch, the more contentious it is every year. So this has been building over time because we keep allowing the
Yes.
executives to have so
Be-
much power. As
because
Kamala herself says,
yes,
a stroke of a pen, and I can put somebody in jail.
and it's for two big reasons. One, because you're putting so much emphasis and authority in one figure, the elected executive, but then also by giving the executive so much authority, you're giving those hordes of unelected executive bureaucrats a ridiculous amount of power. Because a lot of, as we've ranted about ad nauseum, a lot of the things we complain about aren't actually law. I brought up the um the website from the libertarian tax group uh last a couple weeks ago of the Vox fact checking that the tax code isn't 77,000 pages long. It's only 2,700 pages long.
Hmm.
Well, that's still stupidly long. But that website actually rebutted the fact check of, yeah, we know. We said that in our own article is the legislation is 2,700 and change pages, but when you add in all of the regulations that the IRS puts out, the regulations and findings, then you get up to almost 78,000 pages. And I bring that one up because it is the most galling and egregious of examples, but it's not the only one. RFK Jr. talks about this a lot, that as a environmental attorney, you would think, because usually when you see the movies, I can't remember the one John Travolta did. Usually when you see the movies, it's some class action suit because some skeevy company poisoned the water in a town. And I don't remember the one Aaron Brockovich, the one Julia Roberts did. RFK Jr. spent most of his time fighting the EPA
Hmm.
because the regulations actually made it made the environment worse and made the environment for protecting the environment worse. He has spent most of his time as a litigator fighting the EPA and the FDA because the thing they are ostensibly protecting, they are actually making worse. And I've actually seen this a couple of times now while I've been scrolling through X, and uh the traditional capital C conservative movement crowd, the conservative pundits that have been around for a while, the kind of typical crowd from National Review, the Weekly Standard doesn't exist anymore, but the people who worked there and those kinds of places tut-tutting and rolling their eyes at the this is the most important election ever rhetoric, and it's vote like your life. I don't remember who, I think it may have been Bongino had made a post that got a lot of retweets and likes and whatnot of vote like your life depends on it because it does. And oh gosh, the hyperbole of the language. I have said before that if we ever come down to a point where an election means vote, get it right, or the country is over, then the country is already over because our system is designed so that won't happen. Well, we're there.
Hmm.
In fact, we've been there. And I am one of these people who was pretty much on the fence, as I've said here in our discussions. I don't really like Trump personally, and I only kind of like his policies. But they took a shot at the guy, half an inch from killing him.
Hmm.
And then they tried it again. We're
Well,
there, guys.
there's up to seven. It's just
Okay, I hadn't heard how many of these other alleged ones had been confirmed, because there was the one
well,
that was like a
there was the one that shot. There was the one that was
at the
there
golf course.
at the golf
Yeah.
course. Then there was the Iranian slash Pakistani citizen that was caught in getting his shit together.
See, I hadn't even heard that one. I only heard about three because about a week after the golf course incident after the golf course attempted assassination, where a guy actually exchanged fire with a secret service agent, there was a report of explosives being found near a Trump rally, but then a report came out saying, "Oh no, it was just a training exercise," and that one was weird and made you go, "What the hell is going on here?"
well, speaking of training exercises and worry, uh, we're here in I'm here in suburbia, southeast of Houston. Not to give too many details away, but it's near Ellington Air Force Base, and just a few weeks after it was authorized via Congress and the president signing off on it, that the U.S. military could actually act against U.S. citizens. We have Apache helicopters doing drills over suburban areas, and they're calling them training exercises. I'm like, there's no foreign areas that are like our suburban areas in the world. And you're doing this exercise just weeks after you're allowed to act on us, a week before, or actually the weekend before the US election. That's worrisome.
Yeah. I didn't even know we had those assets there. So like when I've
You
been to
know, 2 weeks
visit,
ago, 2 weeks ago, we hear all the planes and the helicopters and everything, but we had the air show. So nobody's worrying a thing or
so
two about it. But after that, we
mhm.
got these. Some people were saying Blackhawks, but apparently some military person got online and was like, "No, these are Apaches." But close enough. They're going
Well,
around
no,
and
that's
doing
even
these.
worse because Blackhawks can be just ferrying people around.
Yeah,
An Apache is ferrying heavy ordnance around. And that's not the kind of base you would expect that at. I've been down to visit what you, for those of you who have watched The Affable Gentleman, our friend from high school, Chuck, who we've had on to talk about The Witcher, and he lives in Killeen. And you see him flying over the top all the time because Fort Hood is so freaking huge that like the town and the highway splits part of the base. So they're flying over all the time because you expect it because there's a whole freaking cavalry division there at Fort Hood. That's not the kind of base where I would expect that kind of stuff to be going on.
well, I mean, I'm assuming any base with air capabilities is going to host all the forces, even though it's technically an Air Force base.
Not necessarily, not unless they have reserve units that train out of there.
They might. I don't know. I'd have to
Yeah.
look that up.
No, that stuff, forward deployed bases have more combined assets, but here in the States, they tend to be more specialized.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I'd have to look that up. My experience with Ellington is when I was second lead on with the airstrike operations, strength and conditioning, but and also when I was doing research with NASA on the Vomit Comet. So those are my only two experiences with Ellington.
mhm. Yeah, I thought it was a training base like Lackland, where or Randolph. Which one is
Lackland
the
is a training,
yeah.
is basic training.
So
Yes.
you see a lot of flights out of there because it is jet training. So it's uh pilots in training doing lots of takeoffs and landings. So you expect to see that kind of thing around there. And I thought Ellington was the same way. Uh, and I would say put on your tinfoil hat, except as I ranted after the first Trump attempted assassination, you know, Dan Bongino had an inside source telling him one of their working theories was the kid might not have been actually trying to target Trump. It's just when he got chased up onto the roof, he saw an opportunity and he took the shot. They think that perhaps, and
He
I'm
was
sure
trying to be
we'll
like a mass shooter kind of
exactly
situation. Yeah.
that the target was actually the crowd because that would have been a much easier target.
Hmm.
And he could have created a mass casualty event much more easily that way, in much the same way, and we don't know, and we should know, in much the same way that how long has it been? When was the Vegas shooting? Any minute now, we're going to get that report, I'm sure.
Yeah, before COVID. So
Hmm.
what, 18 maybe? Somewhere around there.
Yeah. Still, I believe, still the highest mass casualty shooting in America, and we have no effing idea what and why.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't even know where to go to start because we got so
2017.
2017, so I was close. The there's so much going into this what was the real October surprise this time around? The left is trying to spin the Hinchcliffe joke as the October surprise, but I mean, if that's the best you got,
Well, have you seen this article from the New York Times
this article from the New York Times, they say a lot.
about YouTube misinformation? Okay, so this is what I think the October surprise was supposed to be, but I don't think that the establishment media realizes just how widespread information has become. They still think they can control the narrative, which to their credit, they did in 2020. I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head because I didn't think we were going here, but I want to say that in post-election surveys, something like 50% of people who voted for Biden had not heard about the laptop.
Yeah, and it was something like 6% of the people who voted for Biden would not have voted for him.
Yes. So it was
As yeah.
it was some number hadn't even heard of it, and of that number, some number said that if they had heard of it, that would have changed their vote, and it came out to about 6% would have changed their vote or not voted if they had known about the laptop. And so they were able to control the narrative there. I mean, that is, I'm not the first person to have said this, but you want to talk about election interference. You don't even have to look at election day. You can just look at the laptop and go back to the Rogan interview where he walks Zuckerberg right into that trap. And oh well, the FBI told us to, and we did it because it was misinformation because they said so. Well, what the New York Times has done is the first person I saw sharing this was Ben Shapiro, that he actually shared the email or text, whatever it was that he got from this interview, from this journalist. Um, yeah. Well, they've been saying it. This isn't new,
Yeah,
but now,
this isn't new. This is yeah, let me just play this for those that are just listening. This is Hillary Clinton being interviewed by CNN.
yeah,
Oh,
play
did
with
I not
sound,
share with
Boomer.
sound? Hold on. For those that
Okay,
follow
Boomer.
us, we make the same rookie mistake every time.
It should default to once you have made
It
that
should,
selection.
yeah, it should, but it doesn't. We need to learn our lesson.
If the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. And it's not just the social and psychological effects, it's real harm. But if
We
We
lose total control.
saying the quiet part out loud there, aren't you?
Yeah, but she always has been, and the church of the left right now is so. Have you heard some of the stuff with Anna Kasparian, with her leaving the left, Young Turk?
No.
Yeah, it's funny because you see it, and I would assume it's the same leaving the right. It's just that's not the problem right now.
Uh-huh.
Well, actually, we did see it. What was the gal that you said was untriggered that was in that abusive relationship? Uh, the guy that had all the dirt on her that he would release if she left.
Oh, the
Yeah.
Canadian girl,
Uh,
Southern.
yeah, Lauren Southern, Yeah, so you see it on the right too. It's just more rare now because of the political environment. But she used the word, "You're not." I ceased to be pure enough
Hmm.
for the
Hmm.
left. And the way she was coming around, and you see this progression, and I think I probably went through this myself, being more lefty back in the old, Bush days and that kind of stuff. Uh, is when you break that cycle just one time, the magic number is 0. If you comply every time, you never break the cycle. But once you break it just once, then you see another break and you're like, oh, and then you see another break. And then it was like, oh, I was wrong on this. I was wrong on this. I was just following on this. And then the whole world just shatters for you. And I wonder if there's a coping process in there. Mine was so gradual that I don't know, but hers
Hmm.
was like that. And I wonder if there's a coping process in there where it was like you almost want to swing too far the other way. I think James Lindsay did this, where he swung too far the other way and now he's sliding back to the middle. And it's just like you want to, because you're like, ah, gosh, I was wrong about so much. I was misled about so much. I was in this cult and now I'm out of it, but I'm lost. And I think she's kind of in that bubble where she's floating around. And there's so many people on the left. I think RFK did that for a little bit, where he still tried to be a Democrat for so long,
Hmm.
even though he was seeing the things that he needed to fix. Tulsi probably did that for a little bit. Although her reckoning was pretty swift as well, as soon the first time she defied Pelosi. But it's just I wonder how many people are going through that, and I wonder how many people are resisting that because it's a painful process.
All right, so here's what I was referring to.
Okay.
I'm going to pull up now. Ben Shapiro was the first person I saw share this, but then I saw several other targets of this article also share this same text or email. Okay. This is, so for those of you listening, this is Ben Shapiro sharing a screenshot of something, subject Washington Post request. Oh, this is Washington Post. Okay, so this is different, but there's a New York Times article that is the same thing. I'm a tech reporter at the Washington Post. My colleagues and I are working on a story that examines the role podcasts are playing in casting doubt on the integrity of the 2024 election. This actually reinforces my point, because this is the same language the New York Times article was using. And again, for those of you just paying attention to politics, you can go all the way back to the late 90s, early 2000s, when there were, for those of you who don't know, listservs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there was a leak from a listserv that all of these DC reporters and big time journalists and news people were a part of. And there were leaks out of that. Someone leaked some of that to show they are coordinating the narrative. And then it fizzled out and never went anywhere. But, well, it seemed such, but I would submit that that is probably one of the things that helped spark what came to be the new wave of news, which is podcasting. The piece includes interviews with researchers who say podcasts are an especially effective medium for such claims because of how technically challenging it is for companies to do content moderation. A Washington Post analysis found that The Ben Shapiro Show is one of many nationally prominent podcasts that have aired these claims. Our analysis is based on your October interview with former President Trump, where you referred to Democrats as, quote, professionals at ballot harvesting, and Trump referred to them as cheaters. Could you please let me know if you have any comment? Okay, so
I like that she just said Cat as her name. It's
oh
like,
gosh, I didn't even know.
yeah, it's like, well, this is a professional request to a basically $1 million industry,
Mm-hmm.
and you sign it with Cat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming it's short for Catherine,
Uh,
Katrina. I don't know, but it's yeah. Everything is so worded professionally, and then you get to the end and you lose it all. But no, this is very worrisome, because this is the RFK argument. Is they keep using the word misinformation because it's the buzzword,
mm-hmm.
but his argument on when they added the term malinformation.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the problem. Where
Well,
they're
and you see that there with that Washington Post, but then with the one that came several days earlier from the New York Times, the reason that one was so insidious and the reason I think that was their attempted October surprise is because they didn't use the term podcast. They were targeting YouTube channels.
Mhm.
And so the thought was this is the New York Times trying to pressure YouTube to censor news in the week leading up to the election. And they use the word misinformation, and you're talking about an opinion.
Mhm.
You are actively trying to censor editorial opinions. You can disagree with it. You can think they're wrong. So can the listener. The listener can go, I don't know, that doesn't sound right to me. Or if the individual has built up a degree of trust for one reason or another, you can go, oh, okay, well, that sounds plausible and I trust the source. So, but here's the New York Times one. And this
Oh,
is
sorry, I was trying to pull something up while you did that, and it confused me for a second.
okay.
Okay.
So this is the New York Times one, and he's calling this out as an October surprise. And it's the same idea, the same thing. It's just more detailed. I love the opening of I hope you're well. I'm sure you do, Nico Grant, reporter at the New York Times. I wanted to give you an opportunity to comment for an upcoming article that takes a look at how political commentators have discussed the upcoming election on YouTube. Here's the other shenanigan part of it. We rely on an analysis conducted by researchers at Media Matters for America. For those who don't know, Media Matters for America was a group founded by Clinton cronies, primarily to go after Rush Limbaugh and Fox News. And they have been instrumental in the past in going after advertisers for those shows.
Mm-hmm.
So the adpocalypse on YouTube that happened from Vox, they were just running Media Matters playbook. Media Matters had done that before. Could you kindly provide us with a comment or decline to comment by end of day tomorrow? Okay, this isn't a story that you just whipped up today. And you're asking for a comment from one of the targets of this story by end of day tomorrow. You don't actually want a comment. You want a soundbite that you can then smear, which is why
funny
none
because
of these people actually responded. They said,
this is where profanity comes in handy,
yeah,
because it would fire up your base and answer the question at the same time. The comment is that's bullshit.
Mhm.
All you have to do is say that, because it doesn't imply any guilt or innocence. It just says this is bullshit. And your
greatest
base is going to
courtroom
be fired up. Yeah.
greatest courtroom drama ever. Everything that guy just said is bullshit.
Well, but here, for those that are just listening, I brought up a chart of donors to the major political candidates. And who's number one?
Oh, my stars and garters.
Yeah, who's number one under
Number one is Google with a really big number. And number two is Microsoft with another really big number.
yeah. And then it's only number 4 is who? I don't know who Brown and Brown is. I don't know who that is, but number
I'm going to
4
guess
is
an investment firm, but Johnson and Johnson.
oh, amazing, a
I thought he
pharmaceutical
was
company.
buddies with Trump.
Oh yeah, yeah. And
Interesting.
then number 5 is another
Apple,
tech
Oracle,
company.
Wells
Yeah.
Fargo.
Nvidia. Yeah. Netflix, amazing there.
Oh,
I'm
you mean the
surprised
people
Disney
that gave
isn't
$1
higher
billion
up.
to the Obamas because they're well-renowned documentarians?
Yeah. Oh, Disney is on the list. It's on the bottom there. But look at the bar for Disney and look at it compared to the number 1 and number 2 for the other side. Yeah, it's number what 20 on the list for Harris, but the amount they gave is bigger than the number 2.
Yeah.
And this is, I get the ads on YouTube. from the Harris campaign or Obama popping up on my thing. And it's so annoying because they have so many different organizations that do these ads that even if you block the ad, you keep getting them. And it's like, we're losing the spending battle. And it's like, no, you're not. If you want to say, if you want to fact check, if you want to talk about lies, there's the biggest one right there. You're not
Well,
losing the spending battle. You haven't lost a spending battle for I don't know,
and
5 elections.
doubly so now, because this was my complaint during the primary and why I supported DeSantis is, guys, he's desperate to win the primary because then Trump can use donations to pay his legal bills. It it ain't right, but it's true that Trump has a problem in campaign spending because he has ludicrous amounts of legal bills. This is one of the reasons RFK Jr. joined him, is because they did the same thing to RFK in trying to first fight to keep him off the ballot and then fight to keep him on the ballot when he withdrew. Only, with Trump, it's turned up to 11.
Mm-hmm.
So not only are they out fundraising the Trump team, but then the Trump team has to spend a lot of it, what it does raise, on legal bills.
This is where YouTube is coming into this, and I think this is why the attacks are coming. It's not Ben Shapiro, it's not Prager, it's not all of those. Those are the people that are the targets, but that's to set the precedent. Just like Alex Jones was used to set the precedent before the Trump trials, right? So we just had a recent incident where Trump was on Joe Rogan, and it had over 10 million views Friday night, just Friday night, not over the course of a long period of time. In the worst time to post a YouTube video, it got 10 million views, but yet it never trended. And in fact, I even did it myself. There were a lot of people posting this, but I did it myself. If you put Rogan Trump interview into the search bar, it still came, you still got other people's opinions on the Trump Rogan interview. You never got the Joe Rogan Experience podcast video. So it was shadow banned. There's no doubt about it. Now one of the things that they kept floating around was so many people flagged it that it put it in one of the lists or whatever. Even still, it doesn't matter if it's YouTube or if it was users, it still was a suppression collusion. And you said you don't like the guy personally, but the great thing about long form interviews, I've watched him on about 4 of them. The guy's a funny dude.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually
he can be very personable. Yeah.
And the problem for the left is Vance is even better. I just watched about 5 hours of Vance, 2 of them on Theo Vaughn and 3 of them on Rogan. The guy is a pretty decent, just kind of dude. And I was actually skeptical about that when we talked about it way back when they were making the vice presidential pick, that he was like 5 on my list. That was a good pick. It was a good pick. And now compare it with Kamala on a Stephen Colbert drinking a beer.
Mm-hmm.
The scripted "I'm one of you" people talks versus actually just talking to Theo Vaughn about addiction and how bad it is for 45 minutes of the 2 hours. It's a pretty freaking big contrast between the two. And actually, Trump on Vaughn was also good because they did talk about addiction for a while. And notoriously, Trump is sober his entire life. So he was actually, it was almost like watching Peterson interview Vaughn, because he was asking Vaughn about all of these other things around it, because he's like, hey, I don't know, and I want to understand. And it was like the most empathetic Trump you've ever seen. That doesn't happen on CNN. That doesn't happen on Fox. And that's not what dictators do, okay? That's what people who just want to know the people that they're trying to represent do. And this whole cycle is kind of winning me over, even though, I was an RFK guy and I voted for Gary Johnson in 2016. And I really was rooting for Tulsi in 2020. And I did the Unity 2020 movement because I didn't want either of the candidates. This long form system humanizes people, and that's for the good or bad, and that's why Harris is avoiding it.
Yeah. One of the things is also does is it lets you get into more depth. So it shows, so I haven't watched all of it yet, but I've seen some of the Rogan interview where Trump goes into some detail about stuff. So it shows that he has a grasp of the issues. And one of the most important ones that I think should be getting blasted out on media, because I've seen this going around X, is Zachary Levi, who he played Chuck on the TV show Chuck, that was lots of fun. And then he was Shazam in the first movie that was good, and the second movie that was terrible from the DC. And uh he was in an interview saying, I'm not voting for Trump. I'm voting for Trump, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and he rattles off several other names, which is a great point. And then you pair that with, I don't remember who he was talking to, but several days ago, I heard RFK Jr. talking about how this is a big deal, that in his talks with Trump, one of his concerns was the people he put in positions of power, the cabinet people especially, of, hey, you put a oil guy in the EPA, you put a, was it it wasn't Morgan Stanley. It was one of the big Wall
Jeffrey
Street
Sachs, maybe.
Yeah, one of the big Wall Street firms. You put one of their guys in Treasury. You put Bolton in, was he NSA under Trump? And he rattled off these names, and Trump admitted, yeah, when I first got in, I didn't know people in Washington. I'm a business guy. I'm a New York guy.
I think it was Bolton he was talking about, where he actually gave him a compliment. He was like, he's a bad guy, all this stuff that Trump usually says. But then he said,
Yeah.
but sometimes he was a great guy to have around, because I would go meet these foreign leaders and he would be standing behind me, and they knew he was crazy. And they knew he was crazy, and they would do whatever I wanted because he was standing behind me. And it's like,
which is fine so long as he then says, no, sir, I think you should do this. But then when Trump says, no, you're going to do what I want, he says, okay, yes, sir. Which was the problem, not just with Bolton, but a bunch of those guys, is they knew better than Trump. All right, well, you might, but he's also the chief executive and the one who got elected. You weren't. So when you say,
and he's also not looking to get a job at Halliburton afterwards.
Exactly. So when he says, as much respect as I have for guys like Mattis, when Trump says, no, this is what we're going to do, and you've said your piece, and he still says, no, this is what we're going to do, you either resign or you say, yes, sir. You don't go behind his back trying to make your thing happen. That's not how the country works. Anyway, brain fart, distracted. Yes. So he didn't know people. Now he knows people, and he knows the kind of people to put in charge. And this is what RFK Jr. was talking about, is that I had not heard this until I heard him talking about it. Trump has already built a transition team. And that's the other problem with being out fundraised, is because the reason you don't have a transition team until after the election, even though it's kind of dumb because it doesn't give you very much time to do a very complicated job, is because I don't remember which government office pays for it. So once you are the official president-elect, there is a government office which pays for the transition team. Trump is paying out of his own pocket, out of his own fundraising, to establish the transition team now, so that they can hit the ground running. And they know they can start vetting people now, and they know who they're going to put where. And this is where the Rogan interview comes into it, because I saw a clip of him talking about this and talking about RFK Jr. And, I agree with him on a lot of stuff, especially the vaccine and the food things. But some things I disagree with him on. I say, no, Rob, we're not going to do that. Oil for one. I'm a baby drill guy. And he was talking, and I love that. I love that he's open about, yeah, we disagree, but we agree on a lot of other stuff, and he's
Yeah.
a good guy to have on my side.
But that's not the narrative you get, that anybody who disagrees with them is out, you know. Yeah, this is the reason why the rhetoric is so bad right now. So we brought up Gore and Bush before. It was so mild because you're basically getting the same thing between the two. Bush and Gore, the distance between them was a little bit lower taxes, a little bit higher taxes. That's it. But the distance between a populist candidate like Trump and an establishment candidate who is actually, this is the most obviously owned candidate since that we've ever had,
Mhm,
because she was put there, not voted in.
mhm.
This is the most obvious binary we've ever had between populism and this establishment. But the worry is even deeper, because if he wins this time around, they need the left needs to win to prevent this from happening. If he wins this time around, our next president is either Vance, Tulsi, or Vivek. So you either have status quo with Vance, another white man that gets the presidency, you get the first female president, or you get the first Hindu president. You're getting one of these, because there's nobody on the left that can even come close to it, barring shenanigans, you know? And the left knows that. And they so desperately want to have the check your box.
Well, this is a good transition to one of the things I wanted to talk about, which is predicting what the heck is going to happen Tuesday. Because I have no freaking idea for a couple of reasons. But one of the things I heard, and I always like to give credit where it's due, and I can't remember who I heard say this, that um, Steve Deace uses a term called the margin of cheating, which for those of you who don't know, when you do
It's been popular in
statistics,
independent spaces too.
okay,
Yeah.
that's who I first heard say it, and I've heard a couple other people since say it, but he's the first person I heard say it, and he uses it a lot when he's forecasting the election. But for those who don't know, when you do statistics, when you do even a good statistical model has a margin of error, because there are assumptions that you are making even in a good statistical model. And that is why with any poll, you will see a plus or minus and some number. And you want that number to be as small as possible.
With all statistics, you should see a plus or minus.
Yes.
That's the confidence interval. That's
so like
the
if
margin
you
of
see
error.
a plus or minus 5, you should probably laugh and just ignore it, because that's a big margin of error.
It depends on what you're talking about.
If you're talking about like a general public poll on
Yeah.
some number, you should be able to get a better number than that.
If the standard victory is within a point, then yeah, a plus or minus 5 is thrown
exactly.
out. But if we were shifting 10 points at a time, then a plus or minus 5 wouldn't be so bad.
So in the election that was fortified, you had a very strong narrative going into it that the economy's falling apart, COVID is killing us all, Trump's deranged, Trump, isn't fit, people don't like him, Joe is the return to normalcy guy, and they kept Joe in the basement for the whole election because of what COVID was still going strong. So there was a strong narrative that made you think, oh, well, the polls going into it looked like Trump was going to win. Biden ended up winning and it was close, but that's to be expected because of all of the narrative around it. So the narrative is what creates the margin of cheating, is how many votes do you have to keep counting until you get enough votes that you won? Well, how many votes can you keep counting? Can you get away with before enough people start to point and say, what the heck is going on there? And why do they have the windows boarded up of a polling location that is supposed to be open for scrutiny? That is why you have observers. Hey, wait a minute. Why is that guy in Philly literally shoving an election observer out the door and shutting and locking the door?
Let me make a micro example of this. Anybody that's listening to this has listened this far. You've probably been in a long-term relationship and you've probably been burned a time or two. So we all have these things in our pockets right now. And What is this a sign of?
I don't want to look at that. I don't want to see that.
I just for those that are just listening, I just took my phone and I put it face down on the table.
Hmm.
Yeah, the first sign of somebody doing naughty things outside of a relationship is to constantly put their phone face down. And that's what basically happened during that time.
Hmm.
There was a lot of putting the phone face down, barring up windows, saying, don't look here, don't look there. So this was the rhetoric. This was where the media came in, because it was like there were a lot of people. I really think it was poking the bear and trying to have a January 6th happen. It was
That's where I was going,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, because it was hey, what's going on over there? And the answer was, well, don't look over there. It's like, well, why can't I look over
Hmm.
there? Because then you'd be an election denier. Well, but I'm not. I just want to see what's going on over there. I just want to look. Can I not look? No. No. And then you start that
Hmm.
basically they got 70 million people, if we look at vote count, 70 something million people going, why can't I look over there and you won't let me look there? And that's where the violence comes from. The amazing thing, and the thing, if you're a Christian, you probably say hallelujah to, is that it wasn't worse.
And that's what I was getting to, is I don't remember who I
Yeah.
heard float this idea that there is no such thing as a margin of cheating in this election, because they want the violence.
Mm-hmm.
They want the chaos. So if they have to sit there literally all week with the windows boarded up and just counting and saying, oh, look at that, 300,000 votes for Kamala and 0 for Trump, what are you going to do?
I went to look up a name of a guy who's doing stuff on this, and when I went into YouTube. Joe Rogan just released his interview with John Fetterman. So I
That'll
have
be
homework
interesting.
to do, Rogan. I have homework to do, and now I know what I'm doing for 2 hours tonight. But okay, so let me find Rudyard Lynch is this super autistic genius dude that studies history and statistics. And he has predicted he put $1,000 down against another person who predicted civil war in 2020. And he put $1,000 down that 1,000 people die by April because of the election. And I'm like, gosh, dang it, that sucks, and I hope it doesn't happen. But you've been right about so many things, and it's just like, no, people, everybody, relax, breathe. If you want any kind of movement, just push forward the states' rights issue, because that will
Mm-hmm.
counter any authoritarian federal issue. Okay, that's
It,
the thing.
it, if you want, if you think that this might happen, then here's just what you have to be prepared to do. No, that's it.
Yeah,
You don't
no,
have to demonstrate. You don't have to throw something through a window. You just be prepared to say, from the local to the county to the state level, and make sure your representatives have the testicular fortitude to also say, no.
no. Which we have the luxury of saying in Texas, because we have precedent now with the border
Mm-hmm.
crisis,
Mm-hmm.
where he has stood up to the federal government. All your other issues with Abbott aside, he put his foot down, which is hard for him to do. I should have waited till you were taking that drink before I said that.
Oh, you almost got me.
I hinge clipped that one. But it was for those. Yeah, I'm not even going to explain the joke. Look it up. Look up Greg Abbott if you don't know who he is.
There's a reason he's always sitting down in all of his appearances.
Yeah. But no, it's he did stand up, and he led the march in a lot of ways. Iowa's another state that does
Mhm.
it. Idaho is pretty strong. Uh, Oklahoma is kind of weird, because
Yeah.
they're like ultra Bible Belt conservative, but then in the national legislation and government, they do a lot of weird stuff. Like they were the ones that co-authored the the border amnesty bill that they call the border
Yes.
security bill.
There,
So
I don't remember which senator that was, but Langford. That was
yeah,
Senator
yeah,
Langford. He should be gone.
yeah. So yeah, so we'll see what happens. I think the states, there's positives on both sides. The positive on a Trump win is we get more of a representation of the people because he is a populist. And the team he put together is fantastic. And if he keeps listening to them, I think he will because it's his last term. And there's no I need to win again next time because of all the things I've done. I think he's realized that a lot of the things they stand for will give him the legacy of being in the history books forever. And that's what he wants. And you know what? If a narcissist direction is in the right direction, keep him going that way. Now, on the other side, the flip side to that is I think if with a Harris win, we get a massive states' right movement that pulls things back to where the way it should be. And I think we get a bigger push for that if she wins because she's an authoritarian. She's said it out of her own mouth. So I think one would be gentler, which is why I voted the way I did, but the other is necessary. And either way, we might get a win out of this.
That's a significant point to remember is the other is necessary because you're not going to just, yay, I voted the way that saves the country. All right, I'm done now. I'm going to go back to looking at fantasy football receivers because I keep getting injured receivers. It's not my fault. It's just the universe hates me. But you're not just going back to your fantasy football team. It's no, you vote and then you pay attention. And this is getting to the rant that I wanted to go on about how we get here and why I worry about the future unless we, this generation, do some hard things now. So I went out for my evening walk.
Well, my question before you go on to
Okay.
the next topic is this the better place to put in the humor and the comedy of the garbage, or do we wait till the end?
No, let's wait till the end.
Wait till the end. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So
No,
for those that are still listening, hang in there. We got some humor coming up and we got some fun stuff.
So if you like dark comedy, then this darkness is funny. But Halloween night,
My Texans lost a game they should have won. I was scared of a desperate, hungry 2-6 team, and they proved me right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was worse because it was so frustrating because of how they lost, but comforting in that they never looked out of sorts. Like Dallas, when they get into that situation, they look desperate. They never looked desperate. They just kept fighting. They just kept playing. And that was the silver lining, if there was one, plus the fact of all of the injuries that they have because I keep drafting their players. I'm sorry. Anyway, so after the frustration of that, I went out for my evening walk and my low back was hurting. So I didn't even do half of my usual walk. I walked less than half a mile, maybe right at about a half. I think it's a quarter that way and then a quarter back. In that half mile, I was almost run into twice by dumb kids who weren't paying attention to where they were going. And it was worse the second time. My daughter went off on a rant when I talked about this because it was someone who was walking with a friend. And my daughter was like, but that defeats the point of going out for a walk with your friend. Why are you both staring on your phones if you're going out for a walk with your friend? You should be talking to your friend.
You don't know young people these days.
I was like, thank you. I'm glad I'm not a complete failure as a parent that you understand that. And it was the first person I walked up to until I got close and realized it was a youngin'. I was like, are you drunk, dude? Have you been out at a Halloween party and you're drunk? No, it's just some dumb kid who's staring at their phone so intently they don't realize they're swerving all over the path. And this got me to thinking about what you call mindfulness, which is a principle of fitness. You usually hear the buzzword is mind-body connection, but it's more than that. It's deeper than that. Okay. It's
See, I've
You know.
transitioned to the word awareness.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's even better because it's more on the point. Mindfulness, there's a depth there that we might actually get into on Wednesday when we start talking about the flame and the void, because there's some interesting TAM sections there. Teaser for Wednesday for those of you who listen, but it's more blunt and to the point about what the F you're supposed to be doing, which is, are you aware of your surroundings? And now sometimes it's understandable. I don't even remember what we were looking at, but when we were in Korea, I was pointing out something, and we were on this nature walk, me and my wife, and I was like, "Yeah, see the thing over there? It's right there." She's like, "What? Where?" And it's right there by that thing. And you know what? They don't have a lot, but there are venomous snakes here, and I'm glad that's not one of them because you would be bit. And it's understandable because she's a mathlete, not an athlete. She doesn't go outside. I fish, I hunt, I go outside to play sports. My eyes and my brain are used to seeing things in the outdoors. So for her, it's just all a blur. It just all blends together. I can differentiate because my brain is used to it. Well, you have to know if that is a weakness of yours. You know, if you're that client you have that's always thinking about your to-do list, while you're trying to step up on a box, you need to know that, and you need to take steps to avoid that unawareness. You need to be aware of what's going on around you. Well, same thing here. The reason we have a culture that is a dumpster and a politics that is a dumpster fire is because a long time ago, we as a society lost our awareness. We have been on cruise control. We have forgotten that if you live in a free society, that doesn't mean you're just free to do whatever the heck you want. It's why our founding fathers talked about liberty, but for the most part, criticize libertines. Because no, liberty doesn't mean you get to just do whatever the F you want. It means you have the capability to live your best life, which for them meant your most virtuous life. That sometimes means you have to do difficult things. We talk about fitness a lot. Fitness is difficult. It's annoying sometimes.
But the rewards are high. And even in social psych, I mean, I have trouble in this class, but she hits the nail in the head every once in a while. And we did a little section on virtuosity and the actual internal benefits you get from being virtuous to other people in your social society. And I was like, yeah, let's focus on this. Let's focus on this instead of the stupid shit we keep talking about. Okay. Let's go with this. But yeah, but the problem is we have trouble future forecasting that. We see the immediate cost of that. So, okay, so let's do a simple example. You walk by the guy on the street that's got his hat out in front of him, and he's beating on some buckets like it's a drum, right? You could drop $10 in there, but it's the last $10 in your wallet. That would make a massive difference to him, but almost no difference to you. But it is the last $10 in your wallet. And it's so easy to see the last $10 in your wallet versus the good feeling you're going to have for like a week after that because you did the nice thing, because it made a huge difference in this person's life. And we're so far above Dunbar's number that that person is somebody I'm never going to see again. So the immediate loss is bigger than the less immediate reward. Whereas if that was a person in my village and I knew everything about them and why they were there beating on buckets instead of out hunting with the other people in the tribe, it would have been easy because I would have known everything about the situation. So I would have been able to make that decision a lot easier. And we are so far outside of that, especially when we talk about federal elections. We can't identify with somebody in Pennsylvania. We can't identify with somebody in New York because we live in Texas, and it just throws everything off.
That is a good point and better than where I was going to go, because I was going to rant about
Because I'm happiness and you're cyanide. That's why.
when was the last time you went to a school board meeting or a city council meeting, which nowadays you don't even have to go. You can just tune in because they're all online. So you could at least know what's going on. But so I'm not, this is an example that just popped into my head, and I'm not doing it to toot my own horn because I wish I would have done more, but we were living in Joplin when the F5 rolled through, which for those of you who don't know, that's not formula racing. No, that is the biggest category of tornado that there is, and it literally wiped out like a third of the town. We didn't know exactly how bad things were and what had happened because we were right on the edge of the F1 zone. And because it was such a dark storm, it was just hard to see. When it passed by, I go outside, I go next door to neighbors over here, single mom living with her mom. My daughter and her daughter play together. Y'all okay? Okay. I don't even know my neighbors on the other side except to wave when I'm mowing the lawn, but they're coming out. Everyone there, okay, okay. Same thing with the guy across the street. Everyone there, okay, okay. And then mutual friend of ours who had helped my wife get the job there, they were out of town. And my wife says, you should go check on their house so I can let them know what's going on because they were out on vacation. And this is when I finally realized how bad it was, because I only made it a block and a half and there was a 100-year-old oak tree on the ground in front of the street. So I turn around and I come back home and I double check with the neighbors and say, okay, it's really bad down that way. Power lines down everywhere, giant trees down everywhere. This is bad. We're packing up the kids and we're going to my parents, so if y'all are staying in town, we're going to be out. Can you just keep an eye on things? Cool. That was it. Just checking on the neighbors. Everyone okay? Okay, here's what we're doing. What are y'all doing? Okay, cool. We'll check back in once we get settled at my parents and see how things are going. Thank you. And then when we got back, talk to the neighbor across the street. Oh, you stayed here the whole time. How was it? Is the water safe yet? Is the power spotty or is it back on? That's it. Just checking with the neighbors. There's your most local of local level. There is your most awareness of awareness is, hey, who are your neighbors and what are they like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did that after Beryl went through here, and I was going down the street with a chainsaw, just helping people out, and everybody kind of just came together. It's what you do, and if they didn't, they were, gosh, one thing I hate about the burbs is everybody. Let me be political in how I say this. The lack of men is astounding. And so the fact that I was walking up and down the street and there were so many helpless people of XY chromosome walking, in their yards and stuff was very disappointing. But at the same time, it's how they were raised, I guess. So
but that's back to where I started with the awareness of part of awareness is knowing what you don't know. I've said before, and I'll continue to say because it's important, is from the ancient Greeks to the ancient Chinese and everywhere in between, any school of philosophy that you look at, almost all of them, one of the, if not the cornerstone of wisdom is knowing what you don't know. Hey, how do you do that? Yeah. Hey, let me watch you do that. Hey, next time, hey, can you come help? Can you watch me and make sure I'm doing it right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I don't know where we've gone with this conversation, but no, we were talking politics and now we were talking about awareness, but
well, it's part of it because one, that's how we got here. And two, I never really finished my thought of why I don't know what the hell is going to happen on Tuesday is.
Okay. Yeah. That's where I'm trying to connect this back because I want to keep everything on task.
We're in so many bubbles that it seems like the vibe, as the kids would say, has dramatically shifted to Trump Vance, but I don't know because so much of that vibe is on X. And as I've said before, I don't know if the numbers have changed now since Elon bought it, but only about 10% of Americans have an X account. Now it's still important because there is a preponderance of newsmakers that do have accounts, celebrities, journalists, reporters, you know, corporate people. So it is important, even if it is small relative to other social media. And I see it there. I don't know what's happening on Facebook or Instagram. And even if I saw what was happening there, how real is that? Or is that just being curated because they think that's what I want to see? So that's the other part of the I just don't know is we have been on cruise control as citizens. And now, even if people are waking up and want to be aware of what's going on, can they?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, look, we just look at numbers, like you said about X. What's important? Uh, Joe Rogan's interview with Trump, and it actually did come up as the first search term when I looked at it this time. Uh, has 45 million views ish already, and Kamala on her Call Your Daddy podcast still is in like 500,000. So, I mean, that's an indicator. We know YouTube shadow banned this interview and probably promoted the other one.
Mm.
So there's an indicator. Uh, when we look at what Joe Rogan's audience is, the media will tell you it's right wing, but no, he's a former Bernie bro.
Mm-hmm.
Theo Vaughn was a former Bernie bro, and he puts forward his agenda, which is transparent medical billing, that kind of stuff forward. So that's huge. I mean, I'm looking at Joe Rogan and Fetterman right now is 3 hours old and it's already 312K views. So what does that mean for this? Because I mean, I'm assuming I'm going to listen to it later. I'm assuming Fetterman's going to talk positively about Harris because they're of the same party, which is, everybody's like, oh, Rogan's just partisan. He couldn't get Harris on because she's unreasonable, but he got somebody else who's probably going to advocate for her on.
But you never know because, man,
Fetterman had a coming to I understand because I think a lot of the decisions I make in life are based on this boy here who keeps giving me problems, and there is that urgency to do something,
dude's a relatively young guy and he had a small stroke.
yeah, a
There's
stroke that debilitated him for a while.
pretty seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is why I never like really counted him out because you can't speak it doesn't mean you can't think it. And the problem with strokes is they tend to affect the language centers of your brain and not actually the cognitive centers of your brain. So you couldn't count him out yet. And I hated the whole, oh, he had a stroke, he's a dummy, he's a husk and all this stuff argument.
Well, but they're good for him because there's no guarantee that those connections ever get remade.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
and yeah, and here's the thing, the Republicans made a huge mistake there because
Oh gosh, freaking
frankly,
Oz.
I would have voted for Fetterman over Oz because Oz is a proven sellout.
I would have just not voted. I would have been like,
But I saw, but I
ugh.
watched the lady who ran against Oz on a podcast, and I'm like, you just, why not? This girl was sharp.
The establishment wanted Oz.
Yeah, the establishment wanted Oz.
The establishment. It was if I may be mixing up her and one of the ladies that there was someone. I may be mixing up her and the lieutenant governor in Virginia. Was the one in Pennsylvania a Caribbean immigrant who served in the Marines?
That sounds right.
But that may be the lieutenant governor in Virginia because they were both black women who were sharp as tacks, um, and really good candidates, but establishment gonna establishment no matter what party you're in.
I'm looking it up right now. Hold on. This is what I hate that they have so many ads on these things.
Yeah.
McCormick. No, this is different.
There's
Maybe I'm thinking of the Virginia person. Because this is Kathy Burnett. That's who I'm thinking of. Yeah. Okay. There were three people in the race.
McCormick
That's
is
what.
who's running now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it threw me off because there were three people in the race and she was one of the three. Kathy Burnett is who I was thinking of.
Doesn't even autofill when I search for it.
Kathy.
Gotcha.
No, but on my end, I hate to think this way, but we have to in this day and age. Is not only did you have a sharp, super intelligent, super with it person, young, probably could be propelled forward in the process because this is a senator, right? So you could make a name for this person going forward, but it also checked a lot of boxes, and we can't ignore the fact that that matters. And did you get the info on her?
Yep. I was looking her up. It is. My hope is that with a lot of these dinosaurs retiring
Because they're dinosaurs.
Yeah.
The
So
original Ninja Turtle, McConnell.
who was it? There were a couple of conservatives that started selling merch after uh I keep wanting to call it Roe v. Wade, which technically that wasn't happened, but that's what everyone knows. After Roe v. Wade was struck down, and they started selling merch with Ruth Bader Ginsburg's picture on it, and it said RBG, pro-life hero, because she clung to power way past when she was literally physically able to do the job, but she wouldn't let go. And because of that, she died while Trump was in office. And so Trump got to name her successor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the same thing that's happening now with guys like McConnell. The turtle himself is finally retiring, and even if Trump doesn't win, the Trump movement is rising. You see that with guys like Vance and Vivek, and Ron DeSantis wouldn't have won the first election if it wasn't for Trump. And he made it his own, which is why he won so big in his second election. So kudos to him. But there are a number of people like that that are using that, which makes me hopeful that these dinosaurs have clung on so long that now that they're finally stepping down, there is this vacuum. Now, the flip side to that is the same thing is happening on the other side.
Not so much. Let me give a historical thing. This is what I wanted to scream in the face of my classmates the other day, and we probably will have a chance because we talked about DEI trainings and actually the negative impacts of them. Well, we have to go into the history of it because it was 2008 when the housing market crash happened and the bank bailouts came out, and we had two movements. We had the Tea Party and we had Occupy Wall Street. And the thing about those two movements is they had so much in common, except political party. So
that is why Jonathan Haidt's work is so important, because those two groups couldn't talk to each other.
They could, and they were on the verge.
They didn't know how to talk to each other.
They were on the verge of it, though. And so the Tea Party would be the Republican version of the populist movement. So you're Ron Pauls of the world, who actually just agreed to join the Trump team, by the way, on Friday. So Ron Paul is part of the movement now. So all you libertarians get out and vote. But the other side was Occupy Wall Street, which was the populist left. And they were both fighting the exact same thing, which was the establishment bailout of the big banks who caused all the problems to begin with. And Trump is not the catalyst. He is a symptom. because what happened was this the people who were part of this movement with the DEI movements shook hands with the people who have all the money and said, yeah, we'll do all this stuff. And they racially divided Occupy Wall Street. They could not do it to the Tea Party because the Tea Party was mostly white Republicans who were populist and upset with the way things were going. The Occupy Wall Street was a very mixed, because the Democratic Party had 90% of the minority vote, right? So they were able to do it on the left, but they were not able to do it on the right. But it also set up a situation where they could say, well, all those people that wouldn't do this thing, they're racist. That's why they won't do it, because they're racist. So it was a perfect situation for the bigwigs. So they used this DEI movement to break up Occupy Wall Street and demonize Tea Party. That set up Trump because you had all of these Tea Party people who were waiting for somebody to come along that would give the populist message. And then 2015 happens, where the primaries are going, and we have Bush, who were the Republican people? Bush, Cruz, the big ones, Rubio. Who else was in there?
Well, I think it's important to remember that Bush never had a chance, which I think is funny, which shows you that the movement had already started.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even.
Well,
remember.
I'm telling you that's why
Yeah.
where the setup comes in.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but Jeb Bush never got into double digits even.
Mm-hmm.
He never polled over single digits.
It came down to Cruz and Trump near the end. And it was this movement on the right never broke up. So that's where Trump started coming up, and the media helped because they didn't want Bush. They didn't want Rubio. They thought Hillary would beat Trump.
Yes.
So you have Trump coming out on The View in 2015 and Whoopi giving him a big hug, and name all of them. They're giving him a big hug, saying they're
a lot of
his
revisionist
hero.
history going on there.
Yeah. And so finally he gets the nomination, and then everything turns. He's literally Hitler, right? And so it's that was the plan all along. The problem was the movement never broke up. And so you have on the left, you have all this discord between, this white guilt movement, this DEI, break everything up, keep the populace down, get back to the establishment. And they just didn't vote. And so Trump ends up winning the 2016 election because Hillary sucks. They broke everything up on the other side, and they failed to break everything up on the other, but that increased the division because in that same amount of time, they labeled this whole group that wouldn't break up a certain way. So you're a racist if you do this, you're a bigot, you're all these things. Whereas on the other side, it was, I don't want to be looked at that way, but now also I'm not motivated to vote. And then 2020 comes around, we change all the rules, and we saw what happened. And now we're seeing what's going to come out of it on the other end, because populists like Kennedy, populists like Tulsi, populists like Vivek, all of those people who would have been left, Elon, are shifting to the other side, and the machine is trying to stop them. So what's bigger, the movement or the machine? That's what we don't know yet.
That's why I think and I heard people talking about it, but I don't know that I've heard until recently anyone really hone in on. We didn't know it at the time, but I think the biggest, potentially, especially if Trump wins, the biggest moment in the 2024 election was a year and a half ago when Elon bought Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Which is why he's so demonized.
Yeah. And that is why he is, enemy number 2 right behind Trump.
This right winger who makes electric cars. Yeah. This.
And I don't think he would call himself a right winger. He might call himself a libertarian or libertarian leaning, but he's much like with RFK getting booted, freaking Kennedy getting booted out of the Democratic Party, Tulsi and all these others they're just nuts.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I haven't changed. They're just nuts.
Yeah, and this is where authoritarian regimes fail, is they're booted out because they didn't toe the line. Whereas on the other side, again, it was this movement, a groundswell movement, a ground up movement, I should say, that was based on, we're tired of the party line. And so it really set itself up. And I think that's why I voted the way I did, because I think of the two positive directions things could go, I think that one sets up more for the future because we have so many young people who are willing to do the right thing, that are put in prominent positions to do the right thing. It's not even about Trump for me, although he's won me over in a few ways, but at the same time, it's about what comes after him, and that's why I went the direction I did. I hate that it's the Republican Party, but at the same time, if it's a
Well,
completely changed party, then I'm willing to change my opinion.
if the
Yeah.
McConnells of the party are going bye-bye, then it's a lot easier to stomach that vote.
The problem is they're fighting it the whole way. And didn't he say he's going to give up his position?
Well, I thought he was already retiring, but yeah, it's not the next Senate, whether it's majority or minority leader, it won't be McConnell.
Mm.
All right. Well, you had to talk about garbage. Speaking of garbage.
Oh yeah, let's go ahead and finish out with this because it's a little lighter, it's funny. So those that watched the Himmler rally, the Madison Square Garden Trump rally, which to me is a 70,000 person class action lawsuit of defamation, but with the way they covered it in the news. But it's there was a comedian that came out and made a very crass joke about Puerto Rico. If you want context, which you didn't have in that situation, which is why this is not the time or place to have a roast comedian come out there, but he actually is big on environmental issues, including the countries that are dumping a lot of trash into the ocean and stuff. And apparently Puerto Rico's a big offender on that. And so
And it is a territory of the United States, so it should be bound by our environmental laws, but I guess not.
Should be. But so he made the joke that there's a floating something garbage, and I think we call it Puerto Rico or something like that. So paraphrasing, and it became the big thing.
Also,
then,
I actually, you just reminded me of, I hadn't connected these dots until you started talking. I also wonder if part of why he did that is, remember, not that long ago, it was towards the end of Trump's presidency. Remember, a hurricane went through the Caribbean and it hit Puerto Rico, and the governor of Puerto Rico made a big deal about how Trump was a terrible person and he wasn't helping Puerto Rico because he's racist. And then it turns out the governor, either through ineptitude or purposefully, was hoarding supplies. There was video and pictures of supplies in warehouses just sitting there not being distributed.
yeah, if that was in his intent, he could have been more clear about that in his joke, because he's clever enough to do that. He could have made fun of the governor himself, but the response to that is the point is Joe Biden came out and called all Trump supporters garbage. And they tried to cover that by putting an apostrophe in the statement, but if you watch the video, you know that's not what he said. He did call
his
the Trump
language
supporters
wasn't as clear. Remember the evil speech he gave that was really creepy in
Mhm.
Philadelphia, where he had all the red lighting behind him? And speaking of, swastika ideology, it looked straight out of, like the 1984 film. He made a point to make it clear that he was talking about Trump's supporters in Congress, the MAGA, the extreme MAGA in Congress. who were opposing his agenda. The language has shifted, and it's not a he, it's a they. They're talking about you. They're talking about us.
So subsequently, Trump came out and brilliant team, and he talks about it in the clips I'm about to show you. They decided to get him in an orange vest and a garbage truck and have him come out and give a little speech, and he kept that orange vest on for his original speech
with the shirt and tie.
With the shirt and tie. So let's go there. Let's go to the beginning of this first.
And I love that the same people who were melting down over the McDonald's press op are also melting down over this and not getting why this is so brilliant politically.
First of all, it's hilarious, and it's a huge troll, and everybody appreciates a good troll. But at the same time, it also shows that he's in tune with what's going on in the minute. He's not just giving talking points, right? Did I share with sound? We're about, it does say I shared with sound.
This outfit, is when he called us all garbage. How stupid. What a stupid word. That blows deplorable away, don't you think? Of course, I thought irredeemable when she said deplorable or irredeemable. I thought irredeemable was actually worse, but deplorable seemed to catch up. But this garbage stuff blows it away. So I'm in this beautiful plane. I'm enjoying myself. I have a wonderful suit on.
Now, here's the huge thing about this speech is everybody talks about Trump and he takes credit for everything or whatever, but he's actually giving his staff all the credit for this thing.
Yeah.
And one of my people came in and said, "Sir, the word garbage is the hottest thing right now out there. The hottest thing out there. Sir, would you like to drive a garbage truck?" Now, we're about, 30 minutes from landing. We had to do this pretty quick. I said, "It's sort of cool, though, isn't it? Because, And I said, I think that's okay, but, I don't feel comfortable wearing a suit. And they pulled up this garbage truck. I don't know how the hell they did it so fast. They were capable people. They put a big sign on the truck. Did you see it? I think they showed it. Yeah. And then they said, "Sir, we have a vest." I said, "Well, should I leave my suit on and put it over the vest? But that doesn't look very good, right? That doesn't look good." So I said, "All right, look, let me take it off." And then I actually said, I climbed into the truck, but so I said, "How the hell do you get into this truck? It's way up high. It's a big one." This was a beauty. I said, "You didn't have to buy it that big, right? You have to get it that big?" They brought this brand new, gorgeous truck, wonderful driver. He looked like Cary Grant in his prime. You know that?
Self-deprecating humor and and building up the driver. So yeah, this is the thing. This is the part that they don't want you to see.
This beautiful driver, and he drove that big thing up. And I said, "Man, this is bad, because now I have all the cameras are all what? Look at all the fake news. They were, most of them."
I actually seen a video of the driver, and he doesn't look like Cary Grant. He kind of looks like Oliver Anthony. So that makes it extra funny to me.
No, most of them, many of them were there, and I'm saying, oh boy, one little mistake with these guys and your political career is over. You can't even.
Which is funny because you notice that half step he takes back when he pulls the handle. They're actually harping on that in the left-leaning news of how incompetent he is because he couldn't open the door.
Oh, for crying out loud. If you've never gotten into a big work truck before, because those things are about as big as farm trucks I've had to get into. And you go up thinking it's going to be like stepping into, like your truck is a little bit jacked up, right? So your truck is up high.
Only because of my tiny pee-pee.
Exactly. So your truck is up high, but it's still a pickup truck. And you don't realize the degree of distance that is there on a work truck like that. Like if you've ever been in a farm truck and it's oh hey no, this is different. Here, let me step back and get a boost. They're harping on that, and yet for months we were told, if you pointed out, did anyone notice that the president just tripped going up the stairs while trying to get into Air Force One? Is he fit to be president? You were a conspiracy theorist. For months, you were a conspiracy theorist.
So I said, man, if I don't get up there, this is going to be very embarrassing. These stupid people, they'll say, he's cognitively and physically impaired. And I can't do that when I'm alongside of this great athlete. I got to get up to that. So, look, the first stair is like up here. I'm saying, shit. So I had the adrenaline going and I made it.
This step right here. See how he takes that step back? That's what they're harping
And then
on.
I gave a little news conference from the front of the, they asked their wise guy questions and everything. And then we drove about 2 feet. I got out, got into the plane. And then I got in the car and I'm driving over here and I have this still on. And I come into the arena and I say, where's my jacket? I want to get out of this thing. And they said, it would be unbelievable if you could wear it on stage. I said, and I said, no way. I got 25,000 people standing outside. I got all these people here. There's no way I'm wearing it on stage. They said, oh, okay, sir. I said, get me my jacket. But if you did, it actually makes you look thinner. I said, oh. And they got me. I said, I want to wear it on stage. When they said I look thinner, I said, in that case, I'll wear it on stage.
That's the term for that in political nerd circles is retail politics.
Yeah.
And it is the guy who shared that you got it from was talking about the dude's a freaking billionaire, but his comedic timing and his instincts for not just the comedy, but to be able to work the crowd. And that is something I didn't get for a long time because I didn't see it. Mm-hmm. And to your point earlier, in these long form interviews, the Theo Von one was the first one for me because he was so empathetic, talking about addiction and talking about,
family and all of
he had never had to deal with it, but he'd had to deal with his family. And so talking with Theo Von about that and his ability to connect is genuine. That is what drove me crazy about Bill Clinton is it always seemed phony to me. And yet people bought the I feel your pain crap, but it always seemed phony to me. And here I didn't get the appeal until I started to see more of the long form stuff and see his ability to connect with that individual. And then that translates to the audience because the audience that is their avatar. If you are a Theo Von fan, if you're watching him regularly, it's because he is your avatar. For a long time, Rush Limbaugh was my avatar because he said either the things I thought, but didn't have an audience to say it to, or often he would say, yeah, I've been trying to put that into words and I've never known how to explain that. And so that is why he had that audience. And so if Trump is connecting with that person is an avatar of you. And so then you connect with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, so for, I'll arbitrarily, cause it's kind of the start point of his fame, 1980 to about 2015 and a half. He was they called him the blue collar billionaire. That was his nickname in the press, the blue collar billionaire, because he would go to the job sites. He would go negotiate in front of people. He was, I don't know, the good parts of in Tommy Boy, the guy who's, I make car parts for real people, for real Americans. He was that, but he was really that.
Well, he was Dennehy. So
Yeah.
that's
Oh yeah,
to
yeah,
my,
yeah, even better. Yeah, yeah.
to my example, Clinton is the Aykroyd character. That this is just shtick, man.
Yeah, that's even better. Yeah. Yeah. He's you can get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up a bull's ass, but I'd rather take the butcher's word for it, you know? Yeah, it's and we see that with great salesmen. And that's what he was. That's what he does. And I'm just glad this time around what sold me was the team he's putting up around him for all those other things. And but yeah, I just wanted to exit with that last little shtick because he said some funny things here recently. Almost getting shot changed the man realistically when it comes to the way
I
he
think I was
delivers.
probably setting my expectations high and a little too hard on him, that I was expecting more sooner, because I was kind of disappointed in that RNC speech of his, because I was expecting more of a change more rapidly. But I think you're right. I think you're seeing the change in those sit downs. And kudos, as you say, carrying on with the analogy, he's finally found his David Spades. So he has quite a few of them surrounding, Tommy Boy, so that he can be put in a position for people to see.
Well, and the nature of this is why they're so hard on YouTube right now, is the nature of the industry now is it's allowing him to do that, but it's also allowing people like JD to come in and just watch the 3 hours with him on Rogan. And JD was talking about Hunter Biden, and he's like, we should focus on the corruption, but at the same time, I want to hang out with that dude. He's giving kind of just like a real conversation to someone like Rogan, who we know does illicit drugs sometimes and does his thing and identifies with the Bernie bro, now turned moderate, now turned right-wing extremist because they can't go with the establishment crowd, and they're succeeding at it. And I think it's because it's genuine. I don't think it's because they're really great actors, because you can't be a really great actor for 3 hours straight without a break. You can be a really great actor when it's cut. All right, action, cut, action. You can be that. But when it's just a straight up conversation for that long, God, if they are, I'm so impressed. I'd still vote that way. So,
All right, well,
yeah,
we
that's
will
it.
know.
Yeah.
I still don't think we'll know the answer, but we will know something when we see y'all Wednesday. And
Yeah,
then
luckily, we have
of
other
Time.
things to talk about because we have Wheel of Time. Yeah.
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 All right. So we will see y'all for that on Wednesday.
All right. Later, guys and gals.